When I was a little girl, I thought I lived in an all-black town. I didn't know the meaning of segregation. My father, Ernest McEwen Jr., was born in that same little town, in the small city that's now Oxford, Mississippi. When my dad was a little boy, he had two dreams. He wanted to live in a house with running water, and more than anything, he wanted to go to college. But how? These were big, audacious dreams for a young black boy in the 1930s in the Jim Crow South. In fact, dreams like this could get you killed. But you know what? That didn't faze my father. Even as a young boy, he would talk to anybody who would listen to his dreams. Young, old, black, white, it didn't matter. He was in your face, telling you about his dreams, about his vision for a better life. So now it's the 1950s. My father is married with 3 little girls, including me, and he's working as a janitor at the University of Mississippi. Now, he can work there, but he can't go to school there because it's still segregated. But little does he know, he is one step closer to realizing his dreams. And yes, he's still talking about them to the students, to the professors, to anybody who would listen. Now, do any of you remember that little game called telephone where you tell somebody something and then they tell somebody? Well, one of those somebodies was a man by the name of Dr. Love. Dr. Love was a dean at Ole Miss. And when he met my father and heard his story, he just fell in love with him. You can't make this stuff up, right? Mr. McEwen, he said, I think I know someone who can help you with your dream. Dr. Love introduced my father to the person who would change his life, who would change the whole trajectory of my family. That person was Pulitzer Prize-winning Nobel laureate William Faulkner, who lived just at the edge of campus in the home that he called Roanoke. Now, my dad did what any one of us would do, right? He whipped out his cell phone and sent Faulkner a text. Well, he did make a call. But in those days, that meant actually going to see somebody. So my dad did just that. He went to visit Faulkner. Now, Faulkner listened intently as my father spoke about his dream of going to college. Faulkner could feel my father's passion for learning and see the determination in his eyes. Mr. McEwen, do you have a college in mind? Yes, sir. Alcorn A&M. I've heard it's a wonderful school that provides a solid education, a great education for blacks. Excellent choice. Mr. McEwen, if I may, I'd like to help you with your dream. I want to pay for your tuition. I want to pay for your room and board. I want to buy your books. Now, at first, my father was overjoyed. But after a long silence, he slowly shook his head. I want to go to college more than anything in the world. But I just can't accept your generous offer. I don't see how I'd ever pay you back. Now, I'm just a little babe in arms. And I'm saying, what are you thinking? This is your lifelong dream. Faulkner just smiled at my father with a twinkle in his eye, and he said, I don't expect you to pay me back. Mr. McEwen, the only thing I'd ask is that when someone else needs a kindness, you pass it on. And just let that blessing keep on flowing out and into the world. That fall, my father enrolled at Alcorn A&M College. Even after graduating, he and my mom still had to work very, very hard. But eventually, they did make a better life for me and my 4 sisters. By believing in himself and passionately following his dream, My dad created a long wave of learning and generosity, not only in his own family, but in the lives of countless others. A little over 30 years ago, my dad passed away. But you know what? Faulkner could not have asked a better person to pass it on, because that's what he would have done anyway. That's who he was. In fact, if he was here right now, he'd be sitting out there somewhere close to one of you, encouraging you to read a book, to get a dream for your life, to go to school, grad school, meet new people, learn a new language, right? He understood the power of being a lifelong learner. He understood the power of passing his blessings on to others. My father understood the power of being a flowing river, not a frozen pond. Just like Mr. Faulkner understood that, which I'll tell you more about later. This power that I'm talking about is the power of legacy. Now, in U.S. culture, most of us think about legacy as something that happens after you die. When other folks gather around to celebrate your life, and they say wonderful things about you, right? You are there, but you're not alert enough to enjoy what they're saying about you. The truth is, each and every moment of our lives, we are creating a legacy, whether we know it or not. So the question is not, am I creating a legacy? The question is, what kind? Am I creating a life-giving tide or a toxic one? Dr. Maya Angelou reminds us that people will not remember what you say or do, but they will remember how you make them feel. So, we can be a fragrant bouquet, or we can be a basket of thorns. Either way, we make a deposit, and that deposit is our legacy, a current that flows from an individual into another person, from that person into their family, a neighborhood, a community, a country, a continent, our world. Now, as a professor and author, I've had the opportunity to teach and write and talk about legacy for years, right? But I haven't always had that particular language for it. About 20 years ago, I received a gift. I was giving a talk in Sydney, Australia, a talk about transformational leadership, about how so many of our leaders focus on doing, but they fail to see that what we do is undergirded by who we are. After I spoke, I chatted with a number of people in the audience, including a lovely gentleman named Graham. We talked for a while, and then he asked me, he said, "Are you Maori?" And I said, "No, not to my knowledge. Why do you ask?" And he said, "Well, what you spoke about today, my people, the Maori, have lived for thousands of years. You spoke so beautifully about gratitude and love and integrity and being of service. My people have a word for that. We call it legacy. May I use that word?" And he said, "Of course. It belongs to all of us." How many of you out there have heard of Dr. Wangari Maathai? A few of you, okay. Well, Dr. Maathai is from Kenya, and she is another example, a wonderful example of legacy, that current that flows through one person's life and then on to others. As a young girl, Wangari fetched drinking and cooking water from the clear running stream that flowed through her village. She loved playing with the little frogs' eggs and watching the tiny tadpoles swim in that same clear running stream. As a young woman, Mathai left her village to attend college. She would become the first woman in Central and East Africa to earn her doctoral degree. Years later, when she returned to her village, she found that the stream that had once flowed through it, where she once fetched water and watched those tiny little tadpoles play, that stream was no longer there. Instead, there was only a dried up stream bed. So, no fresh water, no bushes, no trees. Wangari realizes that all of these challenges are connected to the steady decline of the local ecosystem. So, she begins to plant trees. And she teaches the people in her village, especially the women, how to plant trees and about biodiversity and sustainability. 30 million trees later, Dr. Mathai would become the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize for her many contributions to sustainable development, democracy, and peace. But you know what? For Dr. Mathai, it wasn't about winning a prize. Through 27 years of perseverance, defeat, and triumph, she didn't even realize anybody was watching. It wasn't about winning a prize. For her, it was about restoring the depleted ecosystem of her ancestral home and teaching other people how to do the same. She wanted to ensure that present and future generations would come to know the same abundance and beauty that she had enjoyed as a little girl. In Dr. Mathai's own words, she said, "I want to inspire the young people and others to give back to our children a world of beauty and wonder." Although she has now passed away, Dr. Mathai continues to be a flowing river. So, how might we be a current of compassion and caring, a current of imagination and inspiration? Well, we could plant 30 million trees, right? Years ago, when I was in Kenya, I planted a tree with the help of a young person named Maurice, who has faithfully watered and tended that tree. Thanks to the internet, Maurice sends me photos of our tree, which now provides inspiration and hope to the young girls and boys who attend a nearby school founded by this incredible young man. We can all plant trees whose shade we will never enjoy, real trees or metaphorical ones. And like my friend Maurice, we can all be a flowing river, creating a current of generosity and goodwill, creating a tide of possibility and peace, making deposits of beauty and blessing on the shores of other people's lives, not just once in a while, but every single day. So earlier I told you about my father being a flowing river, and I promised to tell you about Faulkner. Well, here's what I know. When Mr. Faulkner won the Nobel Prize and the money that goes along with it, he was very clear. He said the money was not his. So Faulkner found a way for that money to flow from him back into the community, and my father caught the wave of that blessing. Because Faulkner saw my dad as a transformational leader in the community. So I want to show you a photo of my dad. This photo is my dad at about age 13 or 14. And this is my mom, Mildred Blackman McEwen. She's about the same age as my dad in this picture. When I began to write my children's picture book about Dad and Faulkner, I asked for my mother's blessing. And she said, of course, your father would want you to pass it on. So I asked my friend Gerald if he'd take that photo of my father and do an age regression to when my father was about 5 or 6, because we don't have a photo of Dad at that age. And so this next picture is a painting that Gerald created, and it's the opening spread of my book. This next photo I want to show you because very few people have been to Mississippi or anywhere close to it. And this painting captures the soul of the South that I was born into, that my father was born into, my mom and Faulkner. And that little house you see right there, that's the kind of house that my dad was born in. And it's the same kind of house that I was born in. So I keep these images all around me, especially on my writing table, because they inspire me. They signify all the people who've poured blessing into my parents' lives, into my life, so that I can pour blessing into others' lives, and you can now pour blessing into others as well. You can just let it keep on flowing, right? So I express my deep, deep gratitude to all of these people because I get to stand on their shoulders. And they have taught me the powerful blessing, privilege, and necessity to be a flowing river. Not just once in a while, but every single day, 365, 24/7. That's what legacy is all about. Thank you.